Hi guys, welcome to my first non-pregnancy vlog. I guess this is more of my birth story. I will share kind of a little update on, first week as soon as I can. This is the first chance and I wanted to make sure I got my labor story before I forgot. Because I did not write things down. Honestly, I tried to do updates. Like I did make like one clip at the beginning of my contractions, and I just couldn't do it. Obviously, it was too chaotic and a lot of pain, a lot of other things going on. So this is Amir. This is our little baby, our little sweet boy. He came on April 5th at 2:21 in the morning. He weighed 7 pounds, 6 ounces, and he's 21 inches, or he was 21 inches long. We're just so overjoyed with him. He was 4 days overdue when he was born, and we just couldn't be happier with such a beautiful, sweet baby. Yeah, I'm trying not to get emotional because I have definitely been emotional through the pregnancy and especially after birth. So this is Moby wrap I have him in. I just wanted him close to me, and he feels, really comforted by being near my chest and, hearing my heartbeat like they do in the womb. And this is the second day that I've had this, so, I think I have him in there right. I haven't worn it like this with him because I don't feel like I have it completely secure yet. Like I'm kind of just trying this out in the video, but I do have, him supported in here, and I am checking on, his temperature and, his breathing. So my phone's ringing, but I'm just going to ignore that so I can get this video. Otherwise, a million distractions with the baby. So if you have tips on baby wearing, I definitely plan on doing that because I, do not want to be immobile. I need to, since I'm at home by myself, I need to make sure that I'm able to get everything done that needs to get done for him, most importantly, and, as much as we can around the house as well. That's what I'm wearing, and so you probably can't see the best of him because he's kind of like nuzzled in there, but there he is. He's just the sweetest. He looks so much like Dad. I mean, almost identical. Everybody keeps saying that, except he is, a little bit lighter, and his hair's not curly that we can tell. But he's just so... I just love him so much. I'm sorry. Anyways, this is going to be a birth story. I just wanted to get this on here before, I forget. And I'm sure this is going to be rambling and go out of order because that's how I am. And, with a birth, there's a lot of details. So I'm going to try and include as many as I can. Anyway, let me kind of go back a little bit to Tuesday. That was the day after my pregnancy vlog and the day after my due date. I went to see my doctor. She did a check, and I was still completely closed, and I was only still like about 30% effaced, and, she's like, well, it doesn't mean labor is not going to be starting soon. She's like, that doesn't mean anything. That's why us doctors don't know at all about when labor will start. We just have no way of really predicting that. So she, was a little definitely discouraged, but she decided to send me down for an ultrasound because she normally only does that after a patient's a week overdue, but because she was going to be out of town from the 4th until the 8th, she wanted to make sure everything was fine with baby and me. So we went to the hospital, and we did an NST test, and that checked out. Everything was great. And then we did an ultrasound, and the ultrasound checked out well except for his fluid level. His fluid level was a bit low, on just kind of borderline where they were thinking about inducing me. It was 6.8, I believe, was the level, and, my doctor wasn't sure, so she wanted to be sure, I guess. She consulted with the doctor on call or the doctor on staff, and they determined that, I don't need to be induced yet. but they're going to check me. They were going to check me on Friday if I didn't go into birth naturally before then, to see how my fluid levels were at that point, and if they were not if they were still dropping, then obviously they were going to induce me, and I was very happy that they didn't have to, because I was very concerned and nervous about being induced. Although I was so excited to, see my baby, part of me was kind of like, oh, well, if they induce labor, I will see him sooner. But I really didn't want to be induced if I could help it, and if he was going to be fine. So, yeah, they set up for Friday, and then also for another one for Monday in case, things checked out and they just wanted to keep an eye on things. But I didn't make it till then. Thankfully, I did go into labor on my own. I woke up on Thursday very early in the morning, Thursday the 4th, at 1 a.m. Almost exactly, because I looked at the clock and I felt like my first contraction then. Although I wasn't quite sure if it was a contraction or if it was like that hip pain coming back, because they were very similar feelings. But this kind of did start in my back, more so than my hip pain did. I did get back pain with my hip pain before, or groin pain, but this was definitely starting in the back and then wrapping around through my hips and my pelvis. So contractions started then about 8 to 10 minutes apart, and they were definitely painful, but they were bearable. As time went on, about 2 to 30, they did go from about 8 to 10 minutes to about 6 to 8 minutes apart, and they were definitely pretty painful, at least I had thought so for the time. They were definitely, kind of like, okay, I need to kind of like roll my body through this, breathe my body through this. But I decided, just to keep waiting it out, because I didn't want to wake up my husband for a false alarm. And also, I had been completely closed, like basically like a day and a half before. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to wait it out because I do not want to go to the hospital way too early. So, but then around 3:30, they were about 4 to 6 minutes apart, and I decided I better just check in with the hospital and tell them kind of what's going on and see what they recommend for me. I was just kind of like laboring on the couch and watching TV and rolling through the contractions, and when I did get a hold of the nurse, I kind of had told her about that, and she did ask, if I knew if I was dilated at all or face, and I told her, and she's like, well, it's up to you. If you want to come down, we can certainly take you in, and see what's going on. But, if I were you, as a first-time mother and not being, dilated, I wouldn't say, she could kind of like didn't say, but she was saying, but she wasn't saying, She's like, if I were you, if I were in your place, I might stay at home for a little while. She said something like that, and I don't want to say it wrong because I don't want people to think that she was like pushing me, but she was kind of suggesting to me that I might want to just kind of wait it out at home for a little while longer unless I felt the contractions were unbearable. She was kind of an odd lady, and I'll tell you about her a little bit later, but yeah, she kind of made it seem like, if you don't want medical intervention, then you probably want to stay at home, basically is what she was kind of trying to say. And also she was kind of hinting that they won't feed me, so if I want to stay home, eat something and, rest up a little bit, because the hospital is, not necessarily the funnest place to be actually in labor unless you need to be there. So I decided, okay, I'm going to take her advice, and because I know I was closed and I don't want to get there and, have them start me on something right away, I'm just going to try to stay and grin and bear it at home for a while. And I said, okay, if things do get worse, or even if they stay the same in like 2 hours, I'm going to go in. So let's see, like 4 o'clock rolls around, I think 5 o'clock, they're kind of still pretty consistent, and I was about to wake up my husband, and then they kind of like dropped off a little bit, and they started going from like 4 to 6 minutes apart to like 7 to 8 minutes apart, and like again back to like 8 minutes apart pretty consistently. So I just started to do squats, and I was just like, okay, I don't want to stop labor. I want this to keep going. I kind of knew this wasn't like, false labor. I kind of felt like this is the real deal, but it started going backwards. So I started, like doing squats throughout the house, and that did start the contractions again. They were actually starting to be like 4 minutes apart. Yeah, around 4 minutes apart. And that was around 5:30. So I woke up my husband around 6. I'm like, okay. I had previously woke him up. I said, I'm pretty sure I'm in labor, but I'm just going to be at home. And I'm like, just get your sleep, get your sleep, try to sleep. So he did, and I woke him up around, 6 o'clock. Like, it was right around 6 o'clock that I woke him up. And I was like, okay, I think it's time for us to go in. So, start getting ready, and, I got the bags ready to go. Just get yourself ready and let's go to the hospital. So we got ready. I called the hospital. I told them I think I'm ready to come in, and it was the same lady, and she's like, yeah, you sound kind of like you're a little more ready now, because definitely the contractions for me at that point had gotten more intense. So on the way to the hospital, things slowed down again, and I got to about 7 minutes apart, on average for my contractions. So I got there, and I was like crying. I'm like, no, please tell me that I didn't go through this all night, and I'm not really, in real active labor yet, or, not real active, but real labor, and don't tell me this is false labor. So I got there, and I was really upset, and I was kind of, crying and emotional, and I told her, and she's like, well, don't worry, we'll just check you and see what's going on, and she's like, if you're, dilated, past the 3, we're definitely keeping you, and if you, think you, ruptured your membranes, and I told her, no, I didn't think that, but the contractions were previously about, 4 minutes apart, but they had slowed down. So they hooked me up to the monitor, and I still felt contractions, but they didn't feel quite as strong as they had before. She came in and checked me, and I was only dilated to a 1. I was so upset. And this was probably by the time they actually came in, monitored me, and actually checked me. It was probably like 7:45, 8 o'clock in the morning. And then she's like, well, here's what we can do. You can walk around the hospital for like 45 minutes to an hour and see if that gets you anywhere. And if you're dilated, even like half a centimeter, then, we can keep you. However, if you're not dilating, we're probably going to send you home. So my husband and I walked around the hospital, came back, and she checked me again, and I wasn't dilated to past 1 at all. So she's like, well, we're probably going to send you home. You checked with the doctor, and yep, they recommended sending me home. I was so frustrated and upset, and I was like, how am I going to go through pain? I could go through like this for days with pain and not actually be in like real active labor. So I was pretty, as I said, pretty upset, just with that. And, my husband's like, don't worry, when the time comes, it'll come. And he's been kind of saying that to me, because obviously being overdue is kind of a frustrating experience and in general, but especially if you're in pain and you're overdue and you think you're in labor and you think this is it. So we got home, and it was about 10:20, I think, when we got home. 10:20, 10:30. I went and laid on the couch with a heating pad on my back, and I just kind of like laid there and kind of rocked because I was still feeling contractions. But I did end up falling asleep for like a little bit, probably about 30 minutes, and I woke up. So this is about an hour after we got home, or 45 minutes after we got home. And I woke up, and I was experiencing an incredibly painful, at that point, contraction compared to what I was feeling before. And I just was like running around, not running around, but I was like trying to walk it around the room, and it was just like a lot of pain. I was on my tippy toes, like, you know, really like wincing, really wincing with pain. And oh, look at that face. Sorry. Oh. Yeah, I was really wincing with in pain, and I kind of leaned over my bed, like hunched over my bed, and all of a sudden, whoosh, I felt like this huge gush of water. And I thought, okay, I could have peed myself because the contraction was so painful. I'm like, okay, and I smelled it, which is gross. I'm like, no, this is not pee. It doesn't smell like urine. It didn't really have a specific smell to me, but I didn't smell like urine. So I'm like, okay, this is probably my water. So as I'm walking, I go to the bathroom to kind of wipe myself down, and I get another big old gush of water, and it's like uncontrollable, hot, not hot, warm gush. And I try to change, and I get another one. I probably have, at this point now, I've changed my pants 3 times, and I keep getting big gushes. Even though I put a pad on the 3rd time, it's still, and I was like, whatever. I don't have any more pants that are going to fit me. We got to get to the hospital now. So I called back, and I was like, yeah, I was here about an hour ago. My waters just broke. So I was actually incredibly excited that my waters broke, because that meant that the hospital was going to keep me, and I was in labor. They can't deny me that. So I was really excited, and I was feeling gross, but I was like, okay, Gotti, it's my husband's name, we got to get going. We have to go. So we go back to the hospital, and they didn't even do like a amniosure test. I don't know if they were just able to tell, but yeah, it was definitely my water breaking. And I also do want to say, like, not at the beginning, but towards like the 2nd or 3rd time, the fluid did have kind of like a brown speckles in it. It sounds gross, but kind of not brown, but kind of like a beigey, yellowy, kind of like oatmeal-y texture with it a little bit. So if you're needing to know about what maybe your amniotic fluid would look like if it broke, it might look like that. So I know it's gross, but this is a birth story and a labor and delivery story. So if you're grossed out easily, you should probably just turn it off right now, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah, so we're at the hospital. They admit me, but this time the hospital was really full. So they had to put me kind of in an extra room. It was still within the labor and delivery unit, but it was like the stinky room, and it was, kind of their extra room. So I ended up being admitted in there, and that is where I spent my entire labor and delivery, which it was just like this tiny room with no window. And I know it doesn't really matter when you're in labor, but it does. It kind of is, you feel like enclosed in there in this box. So, it was fine. I got the care I needed, but yeah. So we were in the room, and we were being admitted. She checked me, and I had dilated to a 2. I was like, okay, labor, my water breaking, that means labor is going to happen faster now. I'm going to start dilating faster, because that's what I've heard, that once your water breaks, dilation is like way speeded up in comparison to before your water's breaking. But little did I know, it was definitely a very slow process for me to actually dilate. Yeah. So we're admitted in the room, and I am definitely experiencing some pain. I had called my 2 friends that originally had kind of like debated on being with me in the delivery room, and they're like, oh no, we want to be there for you, we want to come down. I'm like, I don't know if I want people down here with contractions, I don't know what I want. But they're like, no, please, let us come down there, support you. If you don't want us in the room, kick us out. And so I called them, and they decided to come down. I called my father, and I called my sister to tell them I was in labor, but I was just telling them that, you know, labor had started, my water had broke. So we, you know, just so they knew. Yeah, we at this point, I thought the contractions were really painful, but they were nothing compared to how they were before. The nurse kind of asked me when I got there, like, well, what's your plan? What's your birth plan? It's like, well, I don't really have a set birth plan, but, you know, I definitely want, you know, skin-to-skin contact when he's born. I want him to be laid on my chest. I want to breastfeed if I can right away. You know, those were things that were very important to me. I wanted to avoid any type of like induction methods, even though I knew I was in labor. I wanted to try and avoid that, but I also knew that I was probably going to want an epidural, because at this point, like this, I was only dilated to a 2, and I felt really painful, and what I had thought were unbearable contractions for the time. So I kind of let her know that that was, you know, things that were important to me. The doctor, my doctor wasn't going to be there. I knew that, and so I was a little concerned who was going to cover. And, you know, everybody kept telling me about this doctor, Dr. Fenton, and he was like such a great doctor, and all the nurses are like, oh yeah, you know, he's great, you're really lucky to have him, you know, for the delivery. So it was kind of nice to hear something positive, but who knows, you know, they can just say whatever they want to say. But, you know, if I feel a little bit less nervous about not having my doctor with. And I'm sorry, I don't have times really for you about when my dilation and, you know, time was just not relevant to me. Like, I was just really in a lot of pain, so I just really couldn't focus on time. I just was focusing on dilating, getting that baby out. So I think they didn't give me anything for a while, but they decided that you know, if I wanted to, I could walk around the hospital, but I couldn't. I was just, I was leaking amniotic fluid everywhere up until the delivery, by the way. Like, I was just leaking, and I just didn't feel comfortable. It was painful, and I was, like, on my tippy toes when I was standing, because I could barely, like, just tolerate it. My contractions, they were picking up to about 3 to 4 minutes apart again. I was rolling around in the birthing ball. They brought a birthing ball in there for me, and, you know, I was kind of just rolling around there like that, like, kind of like hula hoop style with my hips, and that actually felt good to kind of relieve the contractions off my back. And I thought I was having back labor. It turns out I wasn't. It was just the pain of the contractions in general just were in my back, but it was not, you know, he was not sunny side up. It was not considered back labor, really. So I was just rolling, yeah, as I said, I'm rolling around in my birth ball and, you know, trying to dilate and trying to, you know, manage my pain. And, at that point, they did start really picking up, like I said, 3 to 4 minutes apart. And the doctor asked if I wanted to have some medication, IV medication, and get my IV started, because, you know, I was getting an epidural, and I said, okay, you know, let's get the IV in. And so we did. We put my IV in, and I thought that was going to be painful, because everybody's like, oh, having the IV in is like the most painful part besides having, you know, versus having an epidural. It's more painful than an epidural. But for me, I felt like no pain when she was putting it in. The only thing was just hard for me to keep my hand still, because I was, you know, trying to roll through my contractions. So cute. Sorry. Yeah, so that at the point that she put in the epidural, no, she did not. She put in IV, and I did get Demerol. Gosh, I'm so bad. I forgot the name of the pain medication. It wasn't fentanyl. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I forgot the name. I'm so bad. It was a you know, a pain medication, and I did get that, and I didn't quite like it though, because it did make me feel very dizzy, and it didn't take away my contractions. So she did tell me that it wouldn't take away pain, but it did kind of take the edge off, and it did, but it only lasted about an hour. And, you know, I did like the relief for the the hour that it was, but I could feel them kind of like picking up again towards the end, and it made me really dizzy, so I was trying not to get any more until I could get the epidural. And so they called the doctor, and they're like, she wants epidural, can we give her the epidural? And he's like, well, I want her to try to get to a 3, because I was still at a 2. I couldn't believe it, after rolling around in the ball for a while. He's like, try to see if we can get her to a 3. And I know I feel like such a baby. I sound like such a baby that I wanted an epidural before a 3, but they were strong, and I just was not dilating. So I rolled around on the birth ball more, and finally they checked me. I want to say it was probably about an hour later, and I was at a 3. So they're like, okay, we can get the epidural started. So I'm like, okay, let's go. I want this. I want this epidural. It took a while, obviously, for the anesthesiologist to come in. At that point, one of my friends had arrived. It was the one I had talked about in my previous vlog. She was going to be in my delivery room originally, and then she kind of was worried about freaking out and didn't want to scare me. But she did end up coming, and at this point, and I was kind of like, I don't know if I want any visitors. I don't know if I want anybody here. And actually, my dad ended up showing up. I'm like, oh God, I love you, Dad, but I do not want you in my labor room. This is like so awkward. I mean, my butt's hanging out. I'm like gushing amniotic fluid everywhere, and I'm about to get my epidural. And they only want one other person in the room. So, I mean, I had my dad kind of like walk around, and my friend walk around with my dad, and I waited to get my epidural. So I'm going to make this stop for part 1, because this is just like I said, the very beginning here. So I'm going to make this a 2-part, because I don't know how long my video will actually let me record in one length, and I think the longest one I've done is about a half hour. So I'm going to go ahead and start with part 2.